All right, everybody, thank you for joining us today. It's Coach Jen, and we are here this week to give you some tips on how to survive through this crazy process of sports being paused while we all cope with taking good care of ourselves and staying inside during the coronavirus. And I have one of my favorite strength and conditioning coaches of all time who I've worked with for, I think, over a decade, right? Did we go over the decade line, Tony?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this is Tony Brown, and he's going to help us today answer some questions.
Thank you, Jen. My name is Tony Brown. I'm the owner of Cali Fit Body. You can find us on the web, califitbody.com. We are a personal training company located in Los Angeles, and we provide one-on-one personal training services, but also a lot of digital offerings, both for what we call click and train, but custom programs, things of that nature. So with right now a lot of people being stuck at home or having to socially distance, there is a huge component to our business to offering online programs to do at home.
Nice. Well, that's what we are absolutely here to do today, to give athletes some ideas about how to best take care of themselves right now, to help them feel really empowered that even without that regular routine that we all get very patterned in as athletes, that there's still lots of things you can do, and really give you a sense of hope and control over the experience that you're having on a daily basis. We are both former athletes. I am a former professional dancer, and Tony played baseball. To what level? You played baseball?
To collegiate level.
So when it comes to movement, what is the single most important thing an athlete needs to focus on during this delay of sports caused by COVID-19?
In my opinion, right now, especially because we are all isolated and potentially you're going to be by yourself, I think to me, the single most important thing would be to focus on developing a new skill. If I was a baseball player, a pitcher, for example, maybe I'd go out into my backyard and I'd work on developing a new pitch, whether it be a curveball or a changeup, something of that nature, or refining something. If I'm a soccer player, refining a certain pass or a style of kick for maybe a penalty kick or something of that nature, and just work that repetition over and over and over again so that when you come back to being able to play with your team or being able to practice collectively, you have a new skill set to showcase both for your team and your coaches.
Nice. I love that. Your idea made me think of reviewing films, right? Maybe if someone isn't quite sure about, okay, what do I need to work on? They might just reach out to their coach, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that is so powerful right now is obviously we all have our smartphones that have cameras. Setting it on a tripod or some type of surface so you can record yourself doing that movement or that skill, and then sending it to your coach for feedback. You know, a famous athlete, one Tom Brady, still works with his throwing coach, Tom House, on a regular basis. And even if they're not in person, Tom can record his throwing mechanics or his movement, send it to his coach, and get some feedback on what he needs to be doing, what he's not seeing, what he potentially could be missing. And that's vital right now. You can go out into your backyard or to an empty field and just record yourself, submit that to your coach, and get some feedback. You know, the more feedback that you can get to enhance or perfect a movement, the more autonomous it'll become, and the easier you'll be able to implement it into your game or your skill or your sport, whatever it may be.
That is such an amazing idea and an automatic way to just empower yourself to get up, move, and get some feedback so that you can keep moving and keep working.
Yeah.
So with training schedules changed and facilities closed, what other ways can athletes get creative about structuring their workouts, making sure they're continuing to move?
Everybody is kind of on a pause. And because everybody is on a pause, this promotes an opportunity to develop weaknesses and turn them into strengths. And so one of the things that can be done is setting up a home schedule or routine. And it doesn't have to be as refined as every single minute laid out, like some coaches like to do, but at least give yourself, let's say, maybe 4 quarters in a day. You have your first quarter where you wake up until like 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, noon, whatever your day is, you're working on one thing. Then your second quarter is another thing. A third quarter is another thing. And you can create themes where third quarter of the day is all about recovery. Maybe you take a nap, maybe you foam roll, maybe you stretch. Fourth quarter of the day is all about developing mental skills. Second quarter of the day is a physical skill. What's my physical skill going to be today that I develop? creating a framework for your day will help you become so much more impactful, feel so much better about yourself in terms of a sense of accomplishment. And it'll really allow you to come out of this position, or for all of us really, but you as the athlete, to come out of quarantine feeling great, prepared, and ready to get back on whatever your field of play may be.
I love it. Every single one of your answers is naturally just building on each other. What I hear you saying first is break it down, right? Like think about your area of, I would say think about your role in the sport, right? Like what role are you filling in your sport, whether it's a field, a court, a studio, a stage, what's your role? What are the principal movements of that role, right? And you're saying break it down to even prioritizing what do I know I'm strong at and where do I know I need work? Then using your support system to help reinforce how you can get better, with the example of recording your movement, sending it to a coach for feedback. And when you think about moving forward in the process, because we're going to be here for a while, right? You mentioned before we got on the call, how long have we been in quarantine?
In California, we've been in quarantine for 31 days.
Yeah.
It could be extended. We just don't know. And so just more and more of a point to not just throw your hands in the air and say, well, whatever, everybody's in the same position. No, this is an opportunity to be working on something and creating some focus around something that you want to improve on.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest opportunity here is, like you're saying, this piece where you ended, which is get on a schedule. Like the sooner that you can figure out a schedule that works for you, and I'll be putting out some additional content on how to make a schedule, but just between you and me, like I think one of the easiest ways athletes can do it, one, I love your quarter idea. Beautiful. Make your day like quarters of a game. Give each quarter a focus, right? You said drills or physical skills one quarter, mental agility 1 quarter, or mind skills training, and then recovery 1 quarter. And then I say give yourself a pass on the 4th because you got to go to homeschool. You need to eat, sleep, and drink, right? And so giving yourself that focus, you can naturally see how that would just drive you right through the day. It's genius and beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. And really one of those quarters can be set aside for your scholastics, because ultimately focusing on your scholastics and making sure that you still excel at that will only help you across the board for any of your physical skill sets. The more your mind is in tune, the more your mind is being stimulated, the more you get out of your body. Your brain controls your body, and the more you can stimulate yourself mentally, the more you're going to be able to fine tune and really get into what your body is doing.
Yep. We cannot neglect the neuroscience.
Right.
So I hear Tony saying, break it down, find the movements you need to work on those patterns, send it to your coaches for feedback. And if nothing else, make yourself a schedule.
Yeah. I would add one component to the feedback loop. Right. Okay. The one component to the feedback loop, we probably, everybody has maybe multiple coaches in their lives, for whether it be a club coach or a recreational coach, or maybe a parent who's their first coach, is to have a very broad, open mindset and go to your coach and say, coach, parent, teacher, what is it that I should be working on? What could I be doing to make myself better? It's not an easy thing to do. It can be a little uncomfortable when somebody gives you their honest feedback, but it'll only make you both mentally stronger, but also really give you something, a core value, if you will, to whatever sport it is you play, to enhance and increase your performance.
I do want to take one more minute to just talk about injury. It's not something I hear people talking about in articles about sports and athletes right now. I'm just not hearing people talk about it. So I really want to make sure we bring it up. And how does this unexpected pause, and for some people cancellation of a season, affect their risk of injury or just change their relationship to that?
Yeah, I think really what it does is it kind of creates this gap between the mental side of what you know you can do and the physical side of what you can do. So if with any period of let's say lack of exercise or lack of movement, or just a long duration, let's say you haven't really been very active over these last 30 days when you've been trying to figure out your schedule and life, what ends up happening is when you do go back to playing your sport, when you do go back to doing your activity, you're still mentally thinking that you can do all those things like you once did, but physically you've dropped off. And as soon as you try to apply yourself at the level that you once did, there's a high potential for injury. If you haven't been sustaining that underlying level of fitness or skill development or movement You're just setting yourself up for failure. And let's be honest, you're young, or hopefully you're young. We're all young at heart, but hopefully the youth allows you to get away with it. But why tempt it? Why put yourself in that position when it's something you have 100% control over?
Absolutely. I always think of basic physics, right? An object at motion stays in motion, and an object at rest stays at rest, people. So sports has paused, and if you pause with it, and then you suddenly jump up, because they're going to turn on the lights, right? And we don't know what this is going to look like when it comes back. So you may have the usual preseason ease in, but I think it's going to be a little bit more like, hitting the go button and everybody comes back.
Yeah, I agree.
And I love that you've really just put it out there that difference in mind and body, your mind's going to think you can do it. But if you haven't been training, it's not that you can't. Like, we're not saying they can't, right? We're just saying when you do, you're more likely to tear something, pull something, twist something inadvertently. And then we've got another sports break.
Yep.
And that's the sports break you don't want to have.
Correct. That's exactly what I was going to say. And that's the more painful one, because you're going to be watching all your peers go out there and continue to play. Meanwhile, you're stuck on the sidelines of whatever.
No, let's avoid it, people. Don't let uncertainty stop you. Make a plan anyways. What, to you, Tony, are the biggest reasons why athletes need to keep pushing themselves to be creative and find ways to keep moving?
If you're any form of competitive athlete, or if you have any form of competitive drive, there's one thing that gets you up in the morning. There's one thing that makes you run your miles, or there's one thing that forces you to get into the strength room, and that is winning and excelling, and not only for yourself, but maybe for the accolades that come along with it. And if you're not doing anything, you're not going to go anywhere. So I think it's a John Woodenism, planning to fail is failing to plan. So if you are not doing anything productive towards your sport or your discipline or your skill, you ultimately are going to fail. And that's going to be more painful than this time off is, just like getting injured when it's something that is under your control. So it starts with always creating a plan. And to me, the number one thing is scheduling your day. And it doesn't always have to be rigid, and you can swap them around, whatever, but just always be working towards something. Have an idea of what it is that you want to be able to do. And then what do you have to lose? Just go for it, execute. And if you fail, great. You'll learn something. I
want to just dovetail on that concept of make a plan with the reminder that we're not always trained to plan, right? We're actually trained to follow a plan. So if Tony is saying this and you're feeling uncomfortable and you don't even know why, that's why. Because someone else always has the plan for you. And this might be the first time in your sports career where you have to make the plan, where you've got to stand up and go, failures, I'm not down with the failure thing. I want to walk this way towards the win. I want to keep being competitive. It's okay to make mistakes, to fail, right? Like, we're not saying failure is bad. It's just that you're not trained necessarily to make these plans. So just acknowledge that. If it feels uncomfortable, it's okay. It felt uncomfortable for all of us. Tony and I have had this discussion before, how odd it was when we were suddenly in charge of ourselves. Yeah. And you've been thrown into this. You've been thrown into being in charge of yourself. So that's why Tony and I are here. That's why we wanted to stop and give you some information and just take time to let you know you can do this. Tony's giving you some great, great tips. So listen to this again and again. If you need, grab a notebook, write it down. The number one thing to end on is just get yourself a plan. What was the John Wooden quote? Tell it to me again. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Let's not plan to fail, people.
Yeah, and you make a very good point in saying that, this is a skill set of creating plans, is a skill set that not a lot of athletes have, because it's not something they've ever had to. You don't show up and the coach says, hey guys, what do you want to do? Or girls, what do you want to do for practice today? They show up and say, this is what we're doing, and you run through the gauntlet and you do what it is that you need to do, and you put faith in your coach that this is what I need to be doing in order to get better, because you're the coach and I'm the athlete, I'm the student, and I'm learning from you. And now you're in a position where potentially you don't have that support structure around you. And maybe you do, maybe you don't. So first thing is reach out to your coach, reach out to your support structure, even if it's just a parent, and say, I want to be working on something. And it does take a little bit of vulnerability, but it's also too realizing that no one is expecting you to have these answers right now, and you have resources available to you, whether it's on a professional level like myself and Jen, or on the amateur level within your own coaching group or your teams, or a friend of yours, or your peers on the team. You can all get together collectively and say, this is what I'm working on, what are you working on? Maybe share videos with each other, but be doing something productive to make yourself a better athlete tomorrow than you are today.
Absolutely. It is the day to go from athlete follower to athlete leader. And like you said, lead yourself with that plan. So thank you so much, Tony, for taking the time, for all your amazing expertise. You're always so wonderful to work with and have just the brightest and most supportive things to say. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome, Jen, and thanks for thinking about me and including me in the process.
Of course.